The massive hunting vessel Swift Kill drifted silently through the darkness of space, its metal hull gleaming under distant starlight. Inside the ship's main control room, Captain Redcrest stood tall, his scaled skin reflecting the soft blue glow of holographic screens surrounding him. His long fingers traced over the image of a blue-green planet spinning slowly before his eyes. "Another hunting ground?" asked Bluescale, his second in command, moving to stand beside him. The younger alien's voice held a mix of excitement and doubt. Redcrest's mouth stretched into what his species considered a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Not just any hunting ground. This is what the scouts call the Death World." He zoomed in on the planet's surface, showing vast oceans, sprawling forests, and towering mountains. "The gravity is crushing, the temperature swings are extreme, and the atmosphere." He paused for effect. "The atmosphere is full of corrosive oxygen." The bridge crew turned to look at their captain, their head crests rising in surprise and interest. They were the best hunters in 12 star systems, and they had grown bored of easy prey. "And the dominant species." Bluescale leaned closer to the hologram, his claws clicking against the display controls. Redcrest's smile grew wider. "They call themselves humans, soft-skinned prey that somehow survived on this killer of a planet. They've barely reached their own moon, but they've spread across their entire world. Every climate, every terrain, they've adapted to it all." "Impossible," whispered one of the crew members. "No species can survive in both frozen wastes and burning deserts." "These ones can," Redcrest replied, pulling up more images. "And that's what makes them perfect prey. Think of the honor, the glory of being the first to successfully hunt these Deathworlders. The stories they'll tell about us." Bluescale studied the data scrolling across his screen. "The last hunting party that found a Deathworld species never returned," he said carefully. "Perhaps there's a reason these humans survived their planet." Redcrest waved his concern away with a clawed hand. "Those hunters were careless. We are not. We have the best technology, the best weapons, and the best hunters in the galaxy. What can a primitive species do against us?" The crew began checking their equipment: plasma rifles, stealth fields, atmospheric suits that would protect them from the deadly oxygen. Their ship carried enough firepower to level a small city, though that would be unsporting. The hunt required skill, not brute force. "Look at their weapons," Redcrest continued, displaying images of human firearms. "Chemical propellants and metal projectiles. Primitive. Their most powerful weapons are kept under strict control by their governments. The individuals we hunt will have nothing but basic tools." The crew chittered in amusement. They had hunted prey with natural plasma weapons, telepathic defenses, and organic stealth capabilities. Simple projectile weapons seemed almost quaint. As the Swift Kill entered the solar system, Redcrest began selecting potential hunting grounds. "We'll start in what they call the Pacific Northwest. Dense forests, mountains, enough room to make the hunt interesting, but isolated enough to avoid drawing attention." He had already chosen his first target. The human lived alone in these woods, some kind of guide or survivalist according to the data they gathered. It would make for a perfect first hunt, challenging enough to be worthwhile, but manageable for a warm-up. "Prepare the landing pods," Redcrest ordered. "Small team first. Myself, Bluescale, and 2 others. Standard hunting protocol." He checked his own equipment one last time. "Remember, we're here to prove ourselves against the most dangerous prey. Take no unnecessary risks." As the crew dispersed to their stations, Redcrest remained at the display, studying the human habitat with hungry eyes. His species had been apex predators on their own world, and they had kept that status as they spread across the stars. Every new world, every new prey species had fallen before them. These humans, these Deathworlders, would be his greatest trophy yet. The fact that they had survived such a hostile world only made them more appealing. Breaking their spirits, showing them their place in the galaxy's food chain, that would be a hunt worth remembering. Little did Redcrest know, he was about to learn why some prey species were best left alone. The morning mist clung to the forest floor as Jack moved silently through the trees. 20 years of living in these woods had taught him every sound, every smell, and every sign that something wasn't right. Today, something definitely wasn't right. He crouched down, examining broken twigs and disturbed earth. The tracks made no sense. They started suddenly, as if something heavy had dropped from the sky, then vanished just as abruptly. His hand touched the ground where the strange marks ended. It was still warm. Above him, hidden by their stealth fields, Redcrest and his hunting party watched with growing interest. The human had noticed their landing site far sooner than expected. Even more surprising, he didn't seem afraid. Just curious. Primitive but observant. Blue Scale whispered through their silent communication system. "Should we take him now?" Redcrest held up a hand for patience. "Let's see what he does first. Study the prey before the strike." The captain was already noting details their scans hadn't shown. The way the human moved without disturbing the forest around him, how his eyes constantly scanned the environment, the complete lack of wasted motion. Jack stood up, adjusting the simple backpack he carried. Something about the air felt different, like the heaviness before a storm, but the sky was clear. He pulled out his old notebook and started sketching the strange marks. Being a wilderness guide had taught him to document everything unusual. You never knew what might be important later. The hunting party followed as Jack continued his morning routine. They watched him check simple rope traps for small game, gather edible plants, and test the water in a stream before drinking. Every action was efficient, practiced, showing years of experience. "Notice how he tests everything before using it," Redcrest observed. "True Deathworld behavior. His species learned the hard way that their world wants to kill them." There was respect in his voice, but also anticipation. Breaking such a cautious creature would make the victory even sweeter. Jack stopped at a small clearing, the same spot where he often ate lunch. But today, he didn't take out his food. Instead, he picked up a stick and began drawing in the dirt, a simple diagram of the forest area, marking the strange tracks he'd found and adding other details. Blue Scale shifted impatiently. "He's mapping our movements. We should strike now, while we have surprise." Redcrest agreed. They had learned enough. He gave the signal, and the hunting party spread out to surround their prey. Their plasma weapons powered up with a high-pitched whine that their stealth fields usually masked. Usually. Jack's head snapped up at the sound. Without hesitation, he rolled sideways, grabbing his backpack in one smooth motion. The plasma bolt hit the ground where he had been sitting, turning dirt to glass. "Interesting," Redcrest purred as the human vanished into the underbrush. He reacted to a sound he's never heard before with perfect survival instinct. He switched to heat vision, but the forest floor was throwing off confusing readings. The day's warmth masked the human's thermal signature. The hunting party advanced carefully, their stealth fields still active. They found Jack's backpack abandoned by a fallen log. Blue Scale reached for it, but Redcrest stopped him. "Oldest trick in the galaxy. Leave your scent trail." He didn't finish. Something whistled through the air, and a simple wooden spear stuck deep into a tree right where Blue Scale's head would have been if Redcrest hadn't pulled him back. The human had merely scored a hit despite not being able to see them. Impossible. But there was no time to consider this as more spears came from different directions. The hunting party took cover, their superior technology suddenly less comforting than it had been moments ago. "Spread out," Redcrest ordered. "Find him." But as his hunters moved through the forest, he realized the human wasn't running away. Each spear throw was driving them in a specific direction, using their own stealth against them. They could either stay grouped and be easy targets, or spread out and lose their coordinated advantage. For the first time in his hunting career, Redcrest felt something new. Doubt. This wasn't the panicked flight of prey. This was the calculated response of a predator dealing with an invasion of its territory. The real hunt was just beginning, but Redcrest was no longer sure who was hunting whom. Night fell over the forest, but darkness brought no advantage to the hunting party. Their quarry had led them on a 6-hour chase that left 2 hunters nursing injuries from crude but effective traps. Redcrest touched the torn scales on his leg where a simple rope snare had caught him off guard. Impossible to track, Blue Scale reported through their comm system. The human is covering his trail with everything. Dead leaves, stream crossings, backtracking. Basic techniques, but used perfectly. Redcrest snarled in frustration. Their heat sensors were useless. The human had rolled in mud, masking his body temperature. Their motion detectors were overwhelmed by the forest's nocturnal creatures, which seemed unusually active tonight. Even their advanced scent trackers were confused by crushed herbs and plants the humans scattered behind him. Meanwhile, Jack sat quietly in a tree, watching the strange shimmer of air that betrayed the aliens' stealth fields. He'd figured out their pattern now. They weren't used to looking up. On their world, prey probably stayed on the ground. But humans had come down from the trees, and they remembered how to climb. He pulled out a small metal tin from his pocket, just a simple box of fishing gear. Inside were hooks, line, and small bells. He'd spent the last hour setting them up in a wide circle, creating a makeshift alarm system. Now he waited, counting the aliens by their distortions in the air. 4 of them, moving with military precision, but clearly frustrated. One of the hunters stepped into his trap zone. A small bell tinkled. The alien froze, then relaxed when nothing happened. These creatures were smart, but they had a weakness. They assumed any trap would try to hurt them. They didn't understand that sometimes a trap was just to gather information. Now Jack knew their stealth suits didn't mask sound. He pulled out his hunting knife and began scraping it slowly against the tree bark. The sound carried through the forest. All 4 aliens turned toward it. Another weakness revealed. They moved as a group toward potential prey sounds. Real Earth predators would spread out, approach from multiple angles. Redcrest knew something was wrong, but his hunter's pride wouldn't let him retreat. Close and slowly, he ordered. The prey is tired. It's making mistakes. Jack smiled in the darkness. He pulled out his emergency flare, the bright red kind used to signal helicopters. Below him, the aliens were moving exactly where he wanted them. Their stealth technology was amazing, but they relied on it too much. They hadn't noticed him gathering dead wood and dry leaves all around their position. The flare ignited with a bright red glare. The aliens' vision sensors, designed for darkness and stealth detection, were overwhelmed. They stumbled, their stealth fields flickering as they tried to adjust. The flying sparks from the flare landed in Jack's carefully placed tinder. Fire spread in a circle around the hunting party. Not big enough to be dangerous in the damp forest, but bright enough to completely ruin their night vision and heat sensors. More importantly, the flames reflected off their stealth fields, turning the invisible hunters into shimmering, visible targets. Above, Blue Scale shouted, finally looking up. But Jack was already moving, swinging to another tree using a pre-placed rope. His grandfather had been a circus acrobat, another thing the aliens couldn't have known. Redcrest fired his plasma weapon blindly, but the humans' movement made sense now. Every trap, every trail, every sound had been driving them to this spot. Not to kill them. This prey was smart enough to know better than to fight directly. No, this had been about learning their weaknesses. Fall back. Redcrest ordered, regroup at the landing zone. His hunters retreated, their coordination broken, their confidence shaken. They'd come expecting to hunt primitive prey. Instead, they'd found a predator who turned their own assumptions into weapons. Jack watched them go, memorizing the sound of their movement, the way their stealth fields worked, the limits of their sensors. He hadn't survived 20 years in these woods by being just a guide. He'd been a combat engineer before choosing this quiet life, and old habits died hard. Tomorrow would be interesting. The aliens wouldn't give up. Predators never did after being challenged. But now Jack knew what he was dealing with. And humans. Humans had a long history of turning other predators' strengths against them. Back aboard the Swift Kill, Red Crest replayed the hunt recordings for the 10th time. His crew watched in silence as the human outsmarted them again and again on the screens before them. The atmosphere in the command room was heavy with unspoken concerns. "Show me the successful hunts," Red Crest ordered. The screens flickered, displaying their previous victories. A six-legged beast that could spit acid, taken down with a single well-placed shot. A floating crystal creature that broke apart under their weapons. A hive-mind insect colony that fell to their coordinated attack. "Notice the pattern," he said, his voice tight with frustration. Every prey species followed their instincts. They all did exactly what their evolution taught them to do. He switched back to the footage of Jack. But this human, he adapts, changes tactics, uses our own methods against us. Bluescale nursed his injured arm, where one of Jack's simple traps had torn through his protective suit. "Perhaps we should call for reinforcements and share the glory." Red Crest snapped, but his hearts weren't in it. On the screens, their helmet recordings showed Jack's handiwork, simple traps that grew more sophisticated with each encounter. The human was learning their weaknesses faster than they were learning his strengths. A warning alarm blared through the ship. "Captain," one of the crew called out. "Our communications array. It's not responding." Red Crest rushed to the console. During their retreat, they had left their landing pods and climbed higher into the mountains, hoping to gain an advantage from above. Now he realized their mistake. They had followed the exact path the human had subtly guided them toward. "Scan the area around the array," he ordered. The results made his scales ripple with disbelief. Small pieces of metal had been scattered around their communication equipment. Bits of wire, old tools, even coins. Each piece was carefully placed to reflect and distort their signals. "Primitive but effective," Bluescale whispered. "Like everything else he does." More alerts flashed across their screens. Their landing pods, left behind in the forest, had gone dark. The human had found them, studied them, and now, Red Crest felt a chill. Now their prey knew exactly what kind of technology they had. "Show me the local information networks again," he commanded. The screens displayed what humans called the Internet. Red Crest had dismissed it earlier as primitive digital communication. Now he saw it differently. Humans were sharing information about strange lights in the sky, about unusual sounds in the forest, about distortions in the air that looked like heat waves but moved against the wind. They weren't just reporting these things, they were analyzing them, comparing notes, forming theories. "Captain," one of the crew spoke softly, "I've been studying their historical records. These humans, they've spent their entire history fighting. Not just other tribes or animals. They fought their own planet just to survive. Heat, cold, oceans, mountains, deserts. They conquered them all." Red Crest watched as more posts appeared on the human networks. Pictures of footprints that shouldn't exist. Theories about advanced technology. And most worrying of all, detailed discussions about how to track and trap unknown predators. They're not just prey species, Bluescale realized aloud. They're what happens when prey evolves to become predators themselves. A new alert caught their attention. Power readings from their landing pods had spiked briefly before going dead. The human hadn't just found their ships. He was taking them apart, learning about their technology piece by piece. Red Crest thought about every trap they'd encountered. Each one tested a different aspect of their capabilities. Their stealth fields, their sensors, their weapons, their tactics. The human had methodically learned about them all. And now he was sharing that knowledge. "We didn't find an isolated prey animal," Red Crest said quietly. "We found a scout for an entire species of survivors, and we just taught them exactly what to look for." He looked at his crew, seeing the same realization in their eyes. "And the worst part? I think they've been hoping to meet us. They've been preparing for something like this for generations." Out in the forest, Jack wasn't alone anymore. Other humans had started arriving, drawn by his carefully placed signals. Each brought different skills, different knowledge, and all of them had the same look in their eyes, the look of a species that had spent its entire existence learning how to overcome stronger predators. The old ranger station buzzed with activity as Jack spread out his hand-drawn maps on the table. Around him stood a small but diverse group. Tom, a local mechanic who'd spent 20 years taking apart engines; Maria, who flew rescue helicopters and knew every mountain peak; Pete, who'd hunted mountain lions since he was a kid; and several others, each bringing their own skills. "They're watching us right now," Jack said, pointing to different spots on his map. "But they don't understand what they're seeing. They think we're just gathering in fear. That's their first mistake." Maria nodded, studying the strange pieces of alien technology they'd salvaged from the landing pods. Their ships use some kind of anti-gravity, but it leaves traces, like a heat shimmer in the air. My night vision goggles can spot them easily now that we know what to look for. In orbit, Red Crest watched the human gathering with growing unease. Their ship's sensors showed more humans arriving every hour, but the patterns made no sense. They came in ones and twos, carrying simple tools and basic weapons. No military response, no advanced technology. Just people. "They're up to something," Blue Scale muttered, watching the screens. "Look at how they move. Each group that arrives immediately starts working. No confusion, no panic. They'd done this before." Down at the ranger station, Tom held up a piece of the alien stealth technology he'd managed to activate. "It's advanced, but it follows basic principles. Everything does. Once you understand that, you can work around it." He pointed to a pile of modified equipment. "Their sensors look for heat, movement, and sound. So we change our heat signature, move differently, and mask our sounds." Jack smiled as he watched his people work. Humans had spent thousands of years learning to hunt things bigger and stronger than themselves. Now all that knowledge was being put to use. Some modified hunting blinds to block alien sensors. Others prepared special arrows that could pierce energy shields. Everyone contributed what they knew. "Found something interesting," Pete said, walking in with his tracking gear. "Their footprints are deeper on the right side. Their bodies aren't balanced for Earth's gravity. In a chase, they'll always turn left slower than right." Each piece of information spread quickly through the group. No formal chain of command, no complicated protocols. Just people sharing knowledge, adapting, preparing. This was how humans had always faced new challenges. Red Crest's frustration grew as he watched more humans arrive. What are they planning? Where are their weapons, their armies? He zoomed in on the ranger station. The humans had covered the roof with simple metal sheets, primitive technology that somehow scattered his best scanning beams. "Captain," one of his crew called out, "we're detecting more of those signal-blocking metal pieces. They're appearing everywhere, creating dead zones in our sensors. The pattern, it's like they're hurting us." In the forest below, Jack's group had finished their preparations. Maria's helicopter pilots knew where to find the alien ship's blind spots. Pete's hunters had mapped out every escape route the aliens might try to use. Tom's mechanics had rigged up dozens of devices to confuse alien sensors. "They think they're the first predators to hunt us," Jack told his people. "But we've been dealing with stronger predators since we first walked upright. Lions, bears, tigers, everything that hunted us just taught us how to be better hunters ourselves." The humans moved out in small groups, each knowing their role. No fancy combat formations, no advanced battle plans. Just generations of experience in dealing with dangerous creatures, shared and adapted on the fly. Red Crest felt a chill as he watched the humans spread through his sensor grid. They weren't running away from the danger zone. They were moving to surround it. Every primitive tool and simple technique they used had been perfectly chosen to counter his technology. "They're not just adapting to us," he realized aloud. "They're using everything they learned from every predator that ever hunted them. All those survival instincts, all that experience, They're turning it all against us. As night fell, the humans were ready. They didn't need orders or signals to begin. Like their ancestors hunting mammoths or stalking lions, they moved as one, a species that had learned the hard way how to take down more powerful prey. The trap closed at midnight. Red Crest first realized something was wrong when his ship's sensors began showing impossible readings. Heat signatures appeared and vanished. Movement patterns made no sense. Sound readings came from everywhere at once. "It's a trick," he snarled, but even as he spoke, the truth hit him. The humans weren't trying to fool their sensors. They were overwhelming them. Every detection system on his ship was receiving too much information to process. Below, Jack's people had started their attack. Maria's helicopters flew in patterns that scattered the ship's scanning beams. Hunters with modified rifles fired special rounds that burst into clouds of sensor-blocking material. Others had started hundreds of small fires that confused heat detection. "They're not even trying to hide anymore," Bluescale whispered, watching the chaos unfold. The humans had learned everything about their technology's weaknesses and were exploiting them all at once. Red Crest ordered his remaining hunters to defend the ship. They activated their stealth fields and moved out, weapons ready. But the humans were ready for them. Modified strobe lights flashed in patterns that made the stealth fields visible. Simple tripwires caught the aliens' legs. They still didn't look down enough. "Left side," someone shouted as an alien hunter tumbled down a slope. Just as Pete had predicted, they always turned left slower. The hunters were ready, their arrows finding gaps in armor that they'd learned about from studying the damaged pieces. Tom's jerry-rigged devices started activating. Car batteries connected to metal coils created electromagnetic pulses that disrupted alien equipment. Old radio parts broadcast signals that jammed their communications. Every piece of human technology, no matter how simple, had been turned into a weapon. Inside the ship, Red Crest watched his crew's confidence crumble. These weren't the actions of primitive prey. This was a coordinated attack by experienced hunters who had spent generations learning to take down stronger opponents. "They're in the trees again," a crew member shouted. Humans had climbed to positions above the ship, dropping simple metal chains that stuck to the hull. The chains began conducting electricity from portable generators, creating a web of energy that confused the ship's defensive shields. Jack moved through the chaos calmly, directing different groups with simple hand signals. Hunters herded confused aliens into prepared kill zones. Mechanics disabled their equipment with precisely targeted disruptions. Even the local kids helped, using toy drones to distract alien sensors. "The ship's power core is overloading," a technician reported to Red Crest. "Their attacks, they're not random. They're forcing our systems to work harder, burn more energy." They learned this from the landing pods they took apart. Red Crest had hunted the most dangerous creatures in 12 star systems, but he'd never seen anything like this. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were systematically taking apart everything that made his people superior hunters. A massive explosion rocked the ship. The humans had found a way to overload the external sensor array. Emergency lights flashed as systems began to fail. Through the viewing screens, Red Crest watched in horror as his mighty hunting vessel was being defeated by creatures who hadn't even reached their own system's edge. "We have to take off," Bluescale shouted. "We have to retreat." But the humans had thought of that too. Their attacks had forced the ship to burn through its power reserves. The mighty engines, capable of crossing light years, had been reduced to struggling against Earth's gravity. Jack's voice came over their own communication system. They'd even cracked that. "You came here to hunt us," he said calmly. "But you forgot something important. On Earth, everything is both predator and prey. Even our weakest members know how to fight. Even our strongest know when to run. We survived this death world by learning from everything that tried to kill us." Red Crest looked at his crew, seeing the same realization in their eyes. They hadn't found prey at all. They'd found a whole planet of predators who had turned survival itself into an art form. Every human weapon, every tactic, every trick, All of it came from thousands of years of adapting to threats. The mighty hunting ship, pride of their species, was now trapped in a web of primitive but devastatingly effective human ingenuity. And more humans were still arriving, each bringing new ways to fight, new ideas to try, new lessons learned from generations of survival against all odds. In the dim emergency lighting of the Swift Kills Command Center, Red Crest recorded his final message to the Galactic Hunters Guild. Around him, warning lights flashed as his ship's systems continued to fail. Through the viewing screens, he could see humans still gathering below, their numbers growing with each passing hour. "This is Captain Red Crest's final report on the Earth expedition," he began, his voice heavy with newfound wisdom. "Let this serve as a warning to all who seek to hunt on this death world. We were wrong. Completely and devastatingly wrong." Outside, Jack and his people had completely surrounded the alien ship. They weren't attacking anymore. They didn't need to. Every system, every weapon, every advantage the aliens had brought was either disabled or turned against them. Humans sat around campfires, sharing food and stories, treating the defeat of an advanced alien hunting party like just another day of survival on Earth. "These humans," Red Crest continued, "are not prey. They never were. We thought their primitive technology made them weak. Instead, it made them strong. Every simple tool they use represents 1,000 generations of learning to survive against impossible odds." He looked at the screens showing the gathered humans. An old woman was teaching children how to spot the shimmer of stealth fields. A teenager was explaining how to modify phones to detect alien energy signatures. Every piece of knowledge was being shared, adapted, improved upon. They don't just adapt, they teach each other. Every weakness we showed them will be known to all of them within days. They learn faster than any species we've encountered. What takes us generations of technology to achieve, they figure out with sticks and stones and pure determination. Bluescale, nursing his wounds, added his own observations to the report. Their planet tried to kill them with heat, so they learned to cool themselves. It tried to freeze them, so they mastered fire. Every predator that hunted them just taught them how to be better hunters. Every challenge they faced made them stronger. The message continued as Red Crest watched more humans arrive. They brought simple tools and basic weapons, but they used them with devastating effectiveness. A species that had survived everything their world could throw at them had turned that experience against their alien hunters. "To any who find this message," Red Crest spoke solemnly, "mark Earth as prohibited. Not because the humans are too weak to hunt, but because they are too dangerous to provoke. They are what happens when prey evolves not just to survive, but to overcome any predator they face." Jack's voice came over their communications again, having long since broken their encryption. "Your ship can still lift off," he said calmly. "We've left enough power for that. Take your wounded and go. Tell others what you learned here." Red Crest looked at his crew, seeing the same understanding in their eyes. The humans could have destroyed them completely. Instead, they were showing mercy, not from weakness, but from the confidence of true apex predators. "We came here seeking glory," Red Crest recorded his final thoughts. "We found something else instead. We found a species that turns survival itself into an art form. They don't just fight back. They learn, adapt, and overcome. And now they know about us. They know there's life among the stars, and they know it might be hostile." The ship's engines hummed to life, using the last of their power. Through the screens, Red Crest watched the humans step back, making a clear path for takeoff. They weren't celebrating or gloating. They were already busy teaching each other everything they'd learned from this encounter. "Mark this world as forbidden," Red Crest concluded his message. "Not for the usual reasons. Mark it because its people are neither predator nor prey. They are survivors. Each human carries within them the combined knowledge of countless generations who looked at stronger, faster, more powerful creatures and said, 'We will find a way to overcome this.'" As the swift kill lifted off from Earth for the last time, Red Crest watched the humans grow smaller below. They had gathered around their fires, sharing food and stories, treating the defeat of an advanced alien species as just another lesson learned, just another skill added to their endless collection of survival knowledge. In the years that followed, no other hunting ships came to Earth. Red Crest's message spread through the galaxy, and Earth gained a new reputation. Not as a death world to be conquered, but as the home of a species that had mastered the art of survival itself. The Deathworlders would be left alone, not out of kindness, but out of respect, and just maybe, a touch of fear.